Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you guys are able to join us. So we had a little bit, just to bring anyone up to speed, we had a little bit of tech trouble with Zoom. Archana and I jumped on here about 15 minutes ago, which is normally plenty of time. And Zoom just decided that they didn't want anyone to see her or hear her, which is kind of a problem. So what we're gonna do is she is called in on the phone. So hopefully you all can hear her. If you can't, just let me know in the chat and we'll try to figure it out on the fly. But overall, I think we're gonna just kind of figure it out and it'll work and it'll be great. But I'm going to help do the presentation side and she's going to speak. So it's kind of what we're gonna try out. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end. I'm really excited for Archana to share all of her knowledge and wisdom about just content marketing and just all the fun things that she does with marketing. She has a lot of great insight and I get to work with her on a couple different projects. So I know firsthand that she knows what she's talking about. So I'm going to turn my camera off so you guys can focus, and Archana, I turn it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Well, I guess, hi everyone, I'm Archana Mehta. I am the CEO of AMS. I have owned this, so we're a strategic marketing consulting agency, and I've had the agency for about 8.5 years now. So I've learned a lot along the way with various clients and kind of what's been working, what has worked for them, what hasn't worked. And more specifically, I would say in the last 10 years, we've really seen a shift when it comes to content marketing and the importance of content marketing. Now and especially now during a pandemic, I mean, if content marketing was, low on your radar before, it should be very high in terms of trying to use content to connect with your audience in this virtual world that we're living in. So what I'm going to talk about today, and Hannah, if you want to move to the next slide, is 10 rules, just things that I've learned along the way for building a successful content marketing program. And certainly, this is not comprehensive, but I think that this can give you a good framework for building your own content strategy and successfully launching content marketing. So if you go to the next slide, because we always have to start off with some interesting facts. So these are pretty stunning facts if you don't already know, but users spend an average of 5.59 seconds looking at your website's content. It's not a lot of time. And in general, they spend 15 seconds on a website. So if you think about that and you think about your own behavior, when you go to a website, you want to find what you want to find. Or if you're trying to learn about something and you can't find it right away, then you bounce off the website. And that's just the standard. So the big question for marketers is, how do you quickly capture a visitor's attention? Please go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're on the slide with the cocktail glass?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay. So I kind of like to think about this a little bit metaphorically. So if your brand was a guest at a cocktail party, what would they talk about? So if you're at a cocktail party, you're kind of, reading the room, you're hearing what people are talking about. And probably these days it's maybe politics. So that's what I like to call trending topics. Like, what are you hearing? What kind of conversation is trending? And then what do your other guests care about? So what are their pain points? What are you hearing from them? And then that's where this whole relevance and purpose come in, because if you're hearing sort of, this is a trending topic, I hear that these people are talking about this specific thing, then you have, as a brand or as a guest at a cocktail party, you're like, oh, okay, this resonates. I'm going to talk about this as well. And so that's where you start to formulate in your mind the type of content or the type of conversation you're going to have. So that's why I think it's a good way to think about content. You want to, and if you scroll to the next slide, Hannah, I like to think about, and this is just a general rule in content marketing. When you are developing content, you don't want to be entirely self-promotional. You can't be 100% sales-driven because people will tune you out. If you're posting about industry and insights and thoughts that's great too, but there can be, and there should be some overlap between the two. So your sweet spot is, you know, in the middle, where you've got some content where you're talking about your brand and you're promoting your brand. There's a third of your content where you are talking about, here are the trends in this industry, or here's what I'm hearing, or here's a great article that we, you know, found, and writing a synopsis about that, for example. And then the overlap. So where your brand and your sales strategy overlap with what the industry is hearing and seeing. And so that's kind of the trifecta when it comes to content. So if you go back to sort of being at the cocktail party, you don't want to be talking about yourself the entire time. While you might think it's interesting, other people probably don't. But you also do want to bring some of your personality into there, and you want to bring some of your aura into there. And so that's kind of why I think it's like a good metaphor to use. So to jump into my rules of content marketing. So if you go to the next slide, Hannah. Mm-hmm. So it's all about intent. I actually approach any kind of marketing problem with intent. Why are you, so for example, let's say, like, hey, I want to create this piece of content and I want to put it out there. But the first question should really be, why do you want to create that piece of content? Who is your audience? What are they interested in? And you want to spend a little bit of time up front thinking through that, because it's really important. The whole purpose of a content marketing strategy is to engage with your audience. It's brand awareness. And you're sort of like that top of the funnel. If you think of a sales funnel, it's like that top of the funnel awareness. And so that, as I said, like it's identifying your intent. And then, also considering what channels do your audience members reside in, what channels are going to resonate best. Is it LinkedIn? Is it TikTok? Is it Instagram? Is it your website? And I know it's like awesome to think that everything that you post could go viral, but in reality, it happens very rarely. So you definitely want to avoid sort of a channel first approach. You want to start with like your intent and your audience and what's going to resonate with them. So the next slide is identify a central leader. And this is something, and I realize that in a small business, if it's a business of one, that person is going to be you. But if you are in a small company and you have a handful of other people, it's important to have any content or any narrative that you create be cohesive. And you want to make sure that whoever is kind of deciding and defining what the content is and putting it out has their finger on the pulse of what's going on. You just don't want to have a fragmented content strategy, because I like to say random content produces random outcomes. You want to have something that's strong, you want to have a clear narrative, and you want to make sure that it's clear to your audience what you're trying to say. If you go to the next slide, it's just being realistic about resources. When I was young in my business, I was writing all my content, I was doing all the research, and good content takes a while to create. I think Elizabeth is on this call. Elizabeth and I create content together sometimes, and a good piece of content can take 2 to 3 hours or more. And so it's just realistic. You should be realistic. Like if you don't feel like you can take it on, outsource it. There's so many great writers out there, and you can absolutely work with them to create good content. But just avoid unrealistic expectations. Or if you're busy running a company and maybe that's your strong suit, maybe content isn't. You just want to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of, I can't get this done because I'm not a good, I don't have this and I just can't get to it. So just outsource it. The next slide the next rule is be useful to your audience. So I like to think of every piece of content should educate, inform, and if you're lucky, entertain. Certainly there are some industries and some clients that we have that, it's humor, you can't really use humor, but at least educate and inform, because I think that any piece of content that you're going to spend effort into creating should have some sort of takeaway for your reader. And that's it. If they find something valuable from that content, you won, and that's fantastic. And I know I said this earlier, but avoid shameless self-promotion. You just don't want to be that person who talks about yourself all the time, the entire party. Okay, so next slide, focus on content with impact. So this goes back to the big picture around intent. Why are you creating the content? And then you want to sort of think about your top of the funnel when it comes to brand awareness. You want to make sure that your content is big picture and it inspires. And certainly, I'll talk to sort of how do you align like your content strategy with your sales strategy in a further slide. But you don't sometimes, and I've been in this situation where the sales team is saying, well, we need to talk about this, but from a content standpoint, you want to talk about something bigger. And you really want, from when you're thinking about a content marketing strategy, you want to kind of have that bigger picture first. Any kind of content that creates brand awareness, because that sort of lower funnel material, like your, for example, maybe it's a white paper or something that's like a lead generation piece, might be something that can follow, but it's sort of high level. And if that doesn't make sense, let me know. I can talk to that a little bit more later. Just ask any questions. So number 6 is, the 6th rule I like to call it is just identify themes for your brand. And don't try to, come up with everything under the sun right away. When you go back to that sort of idea of a dinner party, or, your brand being at a cocktail party, when you're thinking about it, what are those conversations that are bubbling up? What do your guests care about? So for example, we work with a client in the energy space, energy solution space, and they are really focused right now on smart building solutions. So smart building solutions would be my theme. And then, within that theme, we look at what types of content are trending. For example, like what are the trends in the smart building industry for 2020? What is happening with respect to COVID when it comes to smart buildings? And what is the company doing to address those? So that's kind of a theme. And what has been really helpful for me from a content standpoint is, once you have that theme and you create these sort of like more granular ideas within that theme, then build out an editorial calendar, some sort of content calendar that allows you to document those ideas and then put timelines to it so that it holds you kind of accountable for, but it's also, again, it holds you accountable. It's also a place so that you can build out your ideas and you can keep going. And I would just try not to, especially if you're new to content marketing, I would try not to, come up with everything at once or try to tackle all these different things at once, because then that can become overwhelming. But again, just trying to sort of be thoughtful around it. Even large companies, you can't, if you dilute your brand, if you try to write about 25 different things, you should really be focused on the things that are currently resonating with your audience, and that's what goes back to that whole idea of keeping your finger on the pulse. We go to the next slide. Leverage employees for themes. So you never want to create content in a vacuum. So even if you're on your own or you're a small business, it's always great to collaborate with your colleagues, or maybe colleagues who are in similar fields, like outside of your company, or just connections on LinkedIn, because they may have heard something that you haven't, and they might have ideas that you haven't thought of, and that makes for great content. So, and if you do have a small company, I've found that people love to give their insights and ideas, and like, oh, I heard this, and oh, this would be a cool topic. So you want to just make sure that you're not in a vacuum, in a hole, because we can have blinders on and think that this is like the perfect piece of content, but maybe it's not. The next slide is connecting brand awareness to real results. So this is where I was saying, you don't want to have a sales first approach when it comes to just content marketing in general, but you do want your content strategy and your sales strategy to align, because obviously, I understand the realities of you're creating brand awareness to then convert opportunities into sales. So I'm just saying, you just want to make sure that you are thoughtful about it, and that if you do have a sales strategy, that you're pushing that content out in a thoughtful manner. this is my favorite rule. Anyone who knows me knows I love data, and I love to, I think it's so important that if you're going to spend a lot of time creating content, then you want to make sure that that content is optimized for the channel in which it's going to be shared. So for example, if it's your website, you want to make sure it's optimized for search engine. There are, you can go on the internet and find sort of the top 5 best practices when it comes to search engine optimization for content. Like it's just, you know, about headers and tagging your content and making sure if you've defined keywords that you know resonate with your audience, making sure those keywords are in your content piece. And then I also like to use, if you have a WordPress site, Yoast, SEO Yoast, which really kind of walks you through optimization for content in a WordPress based website. Also, just good content just in general should be easy to find. So that's, again, optimized for search. Easy to navigate. So if you are creating something like, I mean, if it's a sales sheet or if it's a blog or whatever, it should be easy to navigate. Should also be, this is very important, easy to act on. So if you have a specific call to action in your blog, it should be easy. A reader, like I as a reader, should be able to find that. And like if I need to sign up for something, it should be easy for me to do that. And then again, going back to that whole idea of easy to learn something from, any good piece of content will provide a nugget of information for your audience. And they'll feel good about that. And then that's how you sort of build that engagement where they took something away, they learned something, they'll come back for more. And then the last piece is just don't give up on content. So, I mean, just don't give up. I know it can seem daunting, especially if you're starting your small business and you're starting a content marketing program for yourself. But I think that one piece of content, one valuable piece of content each month is much better than, you know, 10 or 20 or 70 pieces. So it's really important to just be thoughtful around your strategy and not give up. And you can always, like I said, outsource, or you can find resources, or you can also find collaborators who will work with you. So yeah, so that's what I have for my session. I would love to answer any questions if you have any. And certainly if you have any questions on the last slide, my email is on there, so.
Yeah, for anyone who has any questions, if you want to drop them in the chat. So what I'll do is I'll read them out, and then Archana, you can answer them. And then, yeah, if there's anything specific that you all want to know more about, definitely reach out to Archana via her email as it's on the screen, or you can reach out to me if you don't take it down quite yet, and I'm happy to connect you guys. So let's see if there's any questions. If not, I know I have a couple, so we can definitely touch on those. All right, Archana, one question I had that I get a lot from clients, and then also just kind of thinking through as I like share with others, is how do you approach content and content marketing if you're not really confident in your own writing skills? So like that's something I see a lot, and that was even something I kind of had to overcome was, you know, how do I confidently write about what I know if that's not a natural gifting? How do you kind of, how would you advise someone to kind of navigate that?
So first of all, I think writing is practice. Good writing is all about practicing. The more you write, the better you become. So I think that's like the first step in that. So are you saying, Hannah, like you're not, there's that kind of that piece where you feel like you're not a confident. But second, was a question that you may not know about this particular industry or topic and you need to write about it?
Yeah, or just like how to write, like if you're not if you're not confident in your writing, is there a way? So it sounds like you're saying practice is really good, but are there things like that you can recommend in particular?
I think that just in terms of writing, like if you know your audience and you know what's going to engage with them, like I just like you want to sort of just generally, like when you're writing a piece of content, I think you'd want to have your most important sort of pieces of information up top, you know, so if it's like you're writing about, like let's say you're writing an article about something in an industry, but you want to have like your lead up top, like this is like the most important piece. And then you do go down because imagine people are skimming, like they're skimming your content. They're not going to, you know, give you a ton of time to get through. So you want to have like whatever's most important up at the top. And then as you go down, assume that they may or may not read the content further down.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%.
But honestly, I think it's writing, becoming a good writer and feeling confident and comfortable is a lot about just practice.
Oh yeah, no, I've been doing a lot of writing since starting these mini sessions way back in like May, which feels like forever ago. And I can tell not only do I write more quickly, but I write just better in general. So yeah, practice definitely, while it's not perfect, it makes it better.
And I don't think that every single piece of content that goes out needs to be like this work of art either. It needs to just be something that resonates with your audience.
Yeah, no, that's true. When you're writing pieces of content, if you were to like give someone a guideline on how long to create content, are there any kind of standardized like number of words or length of a blog or an article that you would recommend, or is it kind of really dependent on the audience?
Yeah, I was going to say it's dependent upon the audience. However, I think a good rule of thumb would be 400 to 500 words. Makes for about like a full page to page and a half. Like if you're writing in Word, that's about how long that ends up being. I think there are specific industries, of course, where you have to dive into things a little bit deeper, and that you might end up being at 800 to 1,000 words. If it's a more lighthearted, fun piece, you could be at 200 or 300 words. But I think a good rule of thumb is like 400 to 500 words.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's good. All right, let's see. Are there any other questions in here? I have one more, but I don't want to hog it all. Some of these questions are even ones I get from my clients. All right, cool. My last question then.
I hope I didn't breeze through this, but I hope, like I do hope that it gives everyone a little bit of a framework and also a little bit of confidence that you can do this yourself, and you can. It's all about, really the most important thing is about understanding your audience and what they're trying to, what their pain points are, and how your product or service or solution can address that pain point.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think the easiest way to connect with people is to really understand the obstacles that they face, and then also be able to solve that problem. Just like anytime, I was always taught, you know, if you're ever going to bring up a problem to a boss, or, you know, really to anybody, it's best to come with a solution. And so I think kind of having that mindset, even with some of the content you create, is, you know, show the problem or the issue that people are experiencing, and then show how you provide that solution, but in a way that's not self-promotional or like obnoxious, which takes a little bit of time and finessing, for sure. Yeah, no, this was great. I think we've got about 5 minutes left, so I have one more question. And this is, again, one that I just get a lot from my clients, and so I'm sure I'd love to be able to go back and share with them, is how do you kind of approach, so not being self-promotional all the time, but being self-promotional enough that you're not leaving out the call to action, basically. So if someone's uncomfortable with kind of that sales call to action pitch, do you have any recommendations of some good, just kind of language maybe to start with, to help create that call to action if they're not super confident in that?
So I think when it comes to content, you can be, how do I say this? Yes, there are ways to not be overt about, you know, sort of sign up or buy this. And a lot of that could be just at the end, sort of, you know, here, so let's just say, for example, you have created a piece of content, and maybe it's not a self-promotional piece of content. It's a content that has to do with an industry trend that somehow relates back to your offering. you could always have a sort of call, that your call to action could be, you know, like, hey, I'd love to, just a more generic, like, I'd love to you, or like, if you have any questions, reach out to me. So it's not like a hard sell, if you will. The whole kind of conversation and, or, you know, maybe something around, I've got some, I'm happy to share my thoughts and my knowledge around your, you know, your problems, or, you know, or around, I feel like I'm rambling, but what I'm trying to say is you can have a softer touch around it, and sort of where it's, you're inviting this reader to share a conversation with you, or, you know, you're willing to share your own, you know, insights and thoughts with them, so that it's not sort of a full-on hard sell.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm like talking in circles, I think, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think it's really, instead of feeling like you have to write, hey, come do this, like, give me something, like inviting someone into a conversation as if you were inviting them to like get coffee, which obviously we're not doing right now. But
you know, virtual, but that, you know, I have seen that be an effective sort of like, have a virtual coffee with me and we can talk about it. So
I mean, that's probably great language even for someone to use as like a small business owner, especially if they're like a solopreneur or something like that, like, or, you know, like I'm thinking of like a coach or someone like that, to say, you know, hey, let's get a virtual cup of coffee together, and, you know, it's a link that goes to their Calendly or something like that. I think that would be even like a fun, simple way.
Exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, I am so glad that you were able to share with us, Archana. You have so much great insight and a beautiful presentation, which is always super fun. So we're just going to wrap up here. I think, let's see, Julia said that she liked the tips and that they seem really doable, and that you don't really have to reinvent yourself. That's awesome. So, oh, and she's headed off to a bourbon tasting. Well, that sounds fun. Lucky Julia. No, but that's awesome. I feel like I've learned a lot and just have been encouraged to go out and write more content now. So I hope other people have. But yes, anyone else who wants to reach out to Archana or has any questions, she's got some really great insights. And she and I work together on a couple clients of hers, which is super fun. So I know that she does a great job and knows what she's talking about. So I highly encourage reaching out to her. Archana, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
What I'll do for everyone is I'm going to send you guys the recording and include the PowerPoint if you'd like to go back through and just take a look at it with all the great information. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Talk to you soon, Archana.
Thanks, everyone.